India has tied the Test series 1-1 thanks to Rahana's heroics. Many decisions were made in the dressing room. Specifically, what they brought was Shubnam Gill to replace Prithvi Shaw, and then they added Mohammad Siraj for the injured Mohammad Shami, and lastly, and two more. Pant replaced Saha as a wicketkeeper, and Jadeja replaced Virat Kohli. Um, it was one decision few than most people expected. Most people thought there would be a fifth change as well. Then most people thought maybe KL Rahul would play as well. But they made four changes, for three necessary, well, two necessary and two unnecessary changes. But every change was reaped great results for India. Mohammad Siraj took 5 wickets on his debut. Pant did fine. He gave a good quick fire 29, raised the tempo of the batting. And then you had Shubnam Gill demonstrate that he is potentially could be as good as Rohit Sharma going down the road. He bats a lot like him, and he had a great match for himself. Scored about 80 odd runs aggregate collectively, and scored at a good pace. Gave the top order a good start that you always need from your opening batsman. And then lastly, Jadeja as a replacement for Kohli. I think that was one of the surprising one. Most people thought Kohli would be replaced by a batsman like KL Rahul, and Jadeja would also be added somehow, but not as a replacement for Kohli. And I think that was a great move on part of India because he gave them both strength in bowling, a certain diversity in bowling too, with a left arm spinner, but also he provided a certain depth in the lower order of their batting, which sometimes they would lack. He made the batting wag a little longer because he comes into bat at number of 7 and he can bat pretty well. So gave a certain strength, meat to that lower order of India's batting. I believe the reasons why India won this test match is twofold. First of all, they were able to demonstrate that Australia has a serious problem with their batting, and that problem predates the present Test series. So they made sure that people realized that Australia didn't necessarily win their last Test match because of the way they batted. That Test match was a kind of an aberration. 36 all out was the reason why India lost that Test match. Had they been able to put on any kind of score, had they given Australia a target of 180, I don't think Australia would have won that Test match. I think it would have been a completely different scenario. I think Australia would have probably lost that Test match had India scored just 90 more runs. So they were able to prove that Australia has a serious problem, that the issue is not India's batting, issue is Australia's batting. So that is the main reason why India won this Test match. They completely flipped the script. Everyone was making fun of how little they scored, but really the question is Australia's batting. I mean, after all, let's think about it. You get bowled out for 36, at least it happens fast. The misery ends very quickly. Australia's batting is more miserable because they spend about 100 plus overs and they still only score just 200 runs. That's more miserable to watch if you're a fan of the Australian team. And that issue is more chronic. It has been repeated for the past couple of years. In the way they were able to expose that issue in particular with this Test match was, I believe, the bowling of Mohammad Siraj. I think he's been a great discovery for India, and what he does very well is that he bowls with the older ball better than he bowls with the newer ball. So it causes a lot of threat to Australia because they can't just hope that if they're able to get through the new ball, then they just have to face the threat of Ashwin. No, you have the threat of Siraj as well. You always have the threat of Bumrah because he can bowl well with at any particular moment. So you bring in Bumrah whenever you want a wicket. Doesn't matter if it's new ball or old ball. But with Siraj, the effectiveness he has with the old ball makes Australia not be able to build a rhythm. So specifically, it's the overs 50 to 70. And during those overs, you are supposed to start building a rhythm because after the 80th over mark, you should expect a couple of wickets to fall. It's those 20 overs that the batting side should be able to put on some runs. You expect them to have lost a couple of wickets by then anyways, but you want that middle order to click during those overs. So by the end of the 50th over, let's say you are 130 for 3. The overs 50 to 70, you really want to be able to make it 200 for 3 or 200 for 4. Because then you will lose a couple of wickets and you'll be about 240 for 7, etc. I'm just kind of imagining, hypothetically creating a scenario of a balanced day in between bat and ball. Both sides did had take some honors. What Australia is getting so wrong is that it's not necessarily just the openers. Of course, they have a makeshift opener and an opener who's going to lose the spot to David Warner. But the issue is the middle. The middle is where India broke their back. It was that 124 for 3 to 150 for 7. That's where India broke their back again. And they broke their back on the backs of Mohammad Siraj. Even though Bumrah's wicket of Travis Head started the procession, and there's a lot to be said about Travis Head's batting there, but really Siraj's bowling that was the surprise factor. What he does really well is that his action is very close to the body. His arms don't go too far away. So meaning when you're close to the body, you're going to be able to use your wrist and have that little bit of that flick of the wrist that brings the ball in. So as natural action, the ball will always move in. Doesn't matter how old the ball gets. The bowling action will curve the ball inwards. You add that curving inwards with a slight bit of keeping the ball straight, meaning it's coming in, but once it pitches, it can straighten a little. That causes all sorts of issues to a batsman because it brings into the picture all kinds of dismissals. Let's say you leave the ball because you didn't think the ball would jag in, and it thumps on your pads. You just need the ball to be hitting the stumps. It doesn't have to be pitching in line either, and you're out. Let's say you use your bat to make sure you don't get LBW'd, but the ball pitches and it straightens a little. That can catch your outside edge, and you cannot do anything about it. You cannot change your defense when the ball is straightening because you're trying to protect the gap between your pad and your bat. You want your bat to be right next to your pads. So you're doing everything the right way, and it's too fast. It's 135 clicks. You cannot, after the ball pitches, then all of a sudden change the direction of your bat because you see the ball is straightening. It's too fast. The best you can do is just hope that it either misses the outside edge, or that the defense was solid enough and you were able to actually get the ball hit your bat. But if it does get the outside edge, there's not much you can do about it. So Siraj becomes a lethal bowler as a result. He can get the outside edge. He can get the inside edge too. Let's say the bat is kind of dangling out there and it's not right next to the pad. The ball comes in. It takes the inside edge. The inside edge can ricochet into the stumps. It can go to the keeper. And I guess you could also hit the ball back to the bowler because you're just trying to defend all the time. And, let's say you mistime it. He maybe bowls a little bit of a off cutter, bowls a slower ball, and he pop the ball back to the bowler. That could happen too. All kinds of dismissals come into the fray. And what it does to the batsman is, again, it makes the batsman not think liberally. You cannot think about attacking the bowler. You cannot go, you're just trying to defend at all the time. And I don't think Australia can afford to defend it all the time. The biggest damning stat was that they took them 103 overs to just score 200 runs in the second innings. They were able to survive 103 overs, but at what cost? I mean, you're not going anywhere. You're not moving anywhere. Even though yesterday was big India win because some people thought the pitch has flattened up. Maybe the Australia were able to put on some runs. They did. They put on 70 odd runs. I think the lower order batted well, but they wasn't going anywhere. They didn't move the innings anywhere. I mean, you spend that much time, you should at least give the opposition a 140 to 150 run target. That would have kept people a little interested. But they didn't move anywhere at all. Those 70 runs came very, very slowly. And at the end of the day, it doesn't make much of a difference when you score the runs. The only way you can get the opposition stressed out is if the runs start to flow easier. Even if it's the last man, even if it's the number 10th partnership, even those partnerships become annoying because the runs start to flow faster than you expect them to. If you're not going to make the bowlers sweat, you're not going to make the captain sweat. The captain's going to have great field setups, attack you from the leg, the onside, the offside, any way the captain wants to. But I think the reason why India won again is Siraj's bowling. He ensured that Australia do not build a rhythm in their batting. And by doing so, he exposed Australia's batting for being very frail and brittle, and most importantly, for being very conservative in their thinking. They don't get the game moving. It's very un-Australian-like. It's not the Australia I grew up watching at all. So well done to Mohammad Siraj. Congratulations to India. And I think if unless Australia changes their betting, fundamentally India is, I believe, on the verge of a 3-1 win in this test series. Thank you for watching this video.